Okay, welcome to Philosophy 205, Critical Thinking and Writing in Philosophy. So, as you might expect from the title, this is a course in critical thinking. That especially means we're going to be critically evaluating arguments and writing, so you should expect to do quite a bit of writing. In philosophy, we will deal with philosophical topics. Specifically, we will be thinking about food. This course has a theme, and that theme is food. So we will be reading and making arguments in writing about food that are philosophical in nature. More on that when we get to the schedule at the end of the syllabus. On page 1 of the syllabus is basic course info and my instructor info. I did include my email, but don't email me unless there's some problem contacting me through these other means. If for whatever reason you lose access to Canvas or something, then email me. But otherwise, contact me by Canvas or by Pronto, which is a messaging application that is integrated with Canvas. I have office hours. I'll say more about that when we take a look at our Canvas course homepage, where I have them listed along with links to join them. Okay, I'm going to skip over a lot of the stuff in the syllabus, but I highly recommend that you pause and read the syllabus for yourself in complete. Okay, course description, important. Learning outcomes, super important, especially the ones that I wrote here on this page, the things that I hope you'll take away from this course in terms of critical thinking, understanding and engaging in academic discourse, developing your writing skills, understanding and evaluating arguments, especially with some attention to thinking about fallacies and cognitive biases. But read those on your own time. We're just going to cover the necessary stuff to get started and understand what you're going to have to do right away. Okay, so course materials. Almost everything you're going to need will be made available in Canvas and for free. The exception is a series of tutorials called How We Argue by an organization called Thinker Analytics. This is a nonprofit organization that is partnered with the Harvard Philosophy Department, and they have great content for teaching argumentation through argument mapping. That's a way of visualizing arguments to understand, analyze, and evaluate them. This course will teach you about argumentation, but it'll also introduce you to software, free software that integrates with Google Drive for visualizing arguments, and we are going to be mapping arguments throughout the class. When I lecture on arguments, I'll share my maps of those arguments with you, my visualization of the arguments we're reading and talking about. So this is something that you'll have to sign up for, and it does cost $25, and that is the only expense for the entire course. The course-specific registration link is in the syllabus, but you'll also encounter it in your first assignment, so you don't have to come find this in the syllabus later. More on Zoom office hours later. Important point now is just that I have them, and you can also make an appointment. Pronto messaging. I use Pronto. I really like Pronto, and that's my preferred contact point for anything informal. And by informal, I mean it's not important that you have it in writing, and you're not going to necessarily refer back to it later. So if you just need to ask me a question or ask for help about something, send me a Pronto message. Or a Canvas message is totally fine too. Okay, communication methods, methods of instruction, all important. Academic integrity, obviously super important, but I'm skimming. All I have to say about this right now is it's important, and if you have questions, ask. And there are going to be questions. We will be talking about the academic integrity standards for writing throughout the course, because so many of the extremely powerful tools available to us as writers also may present academic integrity challenges. And in just the last few months, these tools have advanced to the point where you are going to be tasked with navigating this now. And it's not going to be clear and easy for a while, if ever, what constitutes an academic integrity issue. So for purposes of this course, if you have questions, definitely ask. There are no stupid questions. Okay, code of conduct. Be nice, be collaborative. I've never had a problem with this. Accommodation of disability. If you have accommodations, let me know as soon as you are able. And if you don't have official accommodations, you're welcome to contact me if there's something specific that I can do to make the course more accessible or to help you meet your goals in the course. Be aware of the student services that are available to you. I have added a couple links to our syllabus. Let's move to evaluation. What are you going to have to do and how will it be graded? So here's the big picture. And as you can see from the breakdown, half of the work is papers. You're going to write 5 papers, each worth 10% of the course grade, and they're going to be shortish, like 5-ish page range, give or take a page, possibly a little longer. You're going to complete short writing assignments that are really part of the process of writing papers. You're going to complete tutorials, such as the ones already mentioned on argument mapping, but also some writing tutorials. And you are going to participate in the course by discussing the course texts, discussing topics from course text more generally, and workshopping your own work. And you'll write a couple of short reflections on your work. Okay, I've got a more detailed overview of the stuff that I just mentioned here, what exactly participation entails, the tutorials, the writing assignments, and the 5 papers. Here's something that you should be able to think clearly about so you understand what you need to achieve to get certain grades, okay? So as previously stated, half of the class, half of the grade is based on papers, and the other half is not based on papers. This half is based on letter grades. This half is based on pass, no pass, not completion. You can't submit garbage and get full credit, but pass, no pass, as in you're earnestly doing the work, you're trying your best, and you're completing stuff that meets the basic requirements of the assignment. Pass, no pass, okay? And if you don't pass, you'll redo it until you do, okay? So you can expect, if you are just doing the work earnestly and making progress, you can expect full credit on this. So just to make the math simple, let's assume there's 1,000 points in the course. That means 200 of them will be for tutorials, which you'll definitely, if you just complete the tutorial, because you have to keep doing it until you pass a mastery check. If you complete it, you get full credit. Short writing assignments, pass, no pass. So if you're doing them in earnest, engaging with the sources you're supposed to be writing about, you'll get full credit. Are you going to be participating by workshopping your papers, commenting and replying to other people? If so, full credit, reflections, full credit. Okay, so that's 500 points out of 1,000. What would you need to get on your papers to get a passing grade, just a passing grade? So far, if you've just done the work, you're talking 500 out of 1,000. That's 50%. See, math is easy here. What would you need to get up to passing, which is 70%? You'd need 200 points, 200 points out of 500. As you can see, that's less than half the points. So you could write failing papers and do all the work and still pass the course. But people who do all the work don't write failing papers. Indeed, they are definitely likely to write B papers. If you do all the work, you're probably going to write a B paper. I can't guarantee it, but I would bet on it. So let's say 400 out of 500 is a typical scale, low B. How many points are we talking? 500 plus 400 is 900, right? Sorry, out of the whole thing. So out of the 500 remaining, this is 500 out of all the points, 400 out of the 500 remaining, or out of all the points. So what are we talking? We're talking 900 out of 1,000 points. That's an A. So if you write low B papers and do all the work, you'll get an A. Additionally, the papers have follow the instructions as part of the grade. So part of the grade isn't too hard to get because you just follow the instructions. There's also a 5% on-time bonus, more on that in a second. So it's not that hard to get a low B on a paper too. So if you are doing all the work, you're probably just going to get a low B or better anyway. And plus, given the on-time bonus situation and the fact that following the instructions is part of the grade, it's not hard to get a B if you are doing all the work that leads up to the paper, especially since the short writing assignments are really part of the process of writing the paper. So you don't have to be really focused and anxious about writing a great paper. You just have to write a paper that puts in the work and is worthy of getting feedback. And imperfect papers are very worthy of getting feedback. Anything where you've put in enough effort to get feedback and learn from it is going to be worthy of getting feedback. Okay, so that helps you to think about the grade and hopefully reduce a bit of anxiety. Put in the work, do the small stuff, make sure you submit the papers on time, and don't get a bunch of anxiety about making it the most perfect paper you've ever written, because it doesn't need to be. And you will not only pass the class, but you will meet whatever goals you have for the class. Okay. So what about that on-time bonus? Let's talk about late penalties, on-time bonuses, and extra credit as a whole category. Okay, late work. I have a fairly flexible late work policy. You don't want to turn in work late because this class moves fast, but if you do, here's how it's going to go. You may end up with a point deduction up to 20% on work that prevents you from participating in collaborative activities. So that's usually a short writing assignment or a paper. If you don't have it on time, you're not going to be able to participate in a workshop activity. And participating in those workshop activities is important. So that's the only reason you're going to miss points, is if you aren't able to share your work with others, because other people need to see lots of examples, and you're not giving and getting feedback, which is a crucial part of a writing course. So just get it in on time. It does not have to be perfect. It just has to be worthy of feedback. And if you don't, that's the only place that there's going to be a deduction. Now, if your work is more than a week late, I'm still happy to accept it, but you should definitely at this point reach out for help. If you're more than a week late in an accelerated course like this one, that means you're basically 2 weeks behind in a more traditional framework, and that's a lot of weeks behind. So statistically, that's not looking good for completing the course, and I really want you to complete the course, and I'm here to help you. So don't be afraid or feel bad, because I'm not going to be mad at you or anything like that. I'm here to help you and structure a schedule so you can get through the course and meet your goals. So if you're behind, reach out. Okay, on-time bonuses. So I said before, like, late work will result in a point deduction. If I didn't say it, I meant for the shorter assignments that get workshopped. Papers are a different category. Okay, so here in the on-time bonuses section, final drafts of papers that are submitted on time get a bonus, not to exceed the value of the paper, fine print. Papers that are not on time, that are technically late, but are less than 1 week late, will not be penalized. The paper won't. You'll miss out on an opportunity to workshop the paper, which is a participation activity, but the paper won't be penalized itself for being late. You just won't get the on-time bonus, not even if you have a really, really good reason. Why? Because this whole setup is designed around assuming you have a good reason. I assume that the people who aren't getting their work in have a good reason, because things happen and life is hard sometimes. And so I'm not like punishing or penalizing the late paper, but I am rewarding an on-time one in hopes of curbing any amount of perfectionism you might be bringing to the table. Okay. And again, if you're more than a week behind, please schedule a meeting, because I want to help you. Extra credit. There will occasionally be extra credit opportunities for submitting work early, sometimes the short writing assignments, but usually it'll just be for papers. Why? So I can select a couple of them for an all-class workshop where everyone in the class will be workshopping just a small handful of papers, the same papers. So if you want to be selected for that workshop, definitely submit early and you'll get extra credit. You'll get extra credit if you submit early, even if your paper is not selected. Just getting it in early gets you that extra credit bump. There's also going to be an eval at the end of the course worth some extra credit. I don't think anyone's ever earned more than 10% of their grade in extra credit, but if that ever happens, that's the cap. Okay. And basic grading scheme breakdown for your final letter grade. Okay, important dates. Be sure to add these to your calendar: the drop, W, pass, no pass, and withdrawal dates. Those are important. Finally, the course schedule. Week 1 is all about argumentation and argument mapping. What is an argument? How to identify the components of arguments, and how to write and communicate an argument by thinking about what those components are and how they're communicated. How to evaluate arguments. So all about argumentation and argument mapping. As you can see from the assignments, there's a lot of lessons. All of these HWA lessons, that's the online course, the online tutorials I mentioned earlier, and there's a bunch of them. In between those lessons, there are a few small interactive collaborative assignments. So for example, after you complete the first 3 lessons, you're going to complete a small writing assignment. It's 2 paragraphs, very short paragraphs, and then you'll workshop it. After lessons 4 to 6, there's going to be an opportunity to practice mapping arguments using that argument mapping software I already mentioned together. And by together, I mean, I'm going to assign like 10 exercises and everyone should do them all on their own, but you'll post your solutions to like 2 of them. And so will other people in your group. And then you'll give feedback on each other's solutions. Think of it as you're trying to collaborate to make a key to the assignment or something. And then I will also be weighing in to tell you if you are correct or not. So that's week 1, argument mapping. Weeks 2 through 3, the topic, I said before that our topic is food. Our first very important topic will be, is cereal soup? But really the topic is an introduction to writing philosophy papers. And this is the topic we have chosen. We're actually going to get into material that is a little deeper than you might expect when you encounter the question, is cereal soup? But our real focus here is on what is expected in writing a philosophy paper. Okay, so for your first paper for the course, you're actually not going to have to come up with your own argument or ideas. Instead, we're going to begin by listening to a podcast where one of the contributors answers the question, is cereal soup? They argue, no, it's not soup. You're going to pretend that you had all the ideas this person brought up in the podcast, and you are going to write them up in the format of an academic paper. This person makes arguments. They consider alternative views and reject them. So they do somewhat complex stuff. I'm not saying the argument's good or bad, just they are making arguments, but it's in a structure fit for a podcast. It's a structure that is somewhat informal. Your task is to translate it into a typical argumentative paper in an academic context. So you're not coming up with the arguments ideas, you're just practicing the writing. So that's what we'll do for the first part. It's also an opportunity to get clear on this person's argument because in the next week, we are going to evaluate that argument. So your second paper is going to be really your first real philosophy paper. You're actually going to take a position on whether or not cereal is soup. I said earlier, we're actually going to get into some deeper questions than is cereal soup. We don't really, probably you don't, I don't know, really care about what cereal is, but it does force us to ask some deeper questions. For example, when is the fact that everyone thinks something? For example, everyone thinks cereal isn't soup. Or in other words, no one thinks cereal is soup. When is what everyone thinks relevant to drawing a conclusion about what's the case? Maybe you've heard of the ad populum fallacy or the bandwagoning fallacy. When is appealing to what everyone thinks a fallacy? And when is it legit? Because sometimes it is. We're going to look at the difference and evaluate Joyner's argument. Is it a legitimate appeal to what most people think or not? We're also going to look at the nature of categories, right? So something that people often say is, well, whether or not something is soup is up to us because we're language users deciding which things go in our culinary categories. So we're going to read a paper about categorizing celestial bodies, planets. What makes Pluto a planet or not a planet? It used to be in the category planet. It somewhat recently got kicked out. What makes one way of categorizing celestial objects any better than another? Is it up to us? We're going to read a paper about that. Slater is going to say some stuff about the sense in which categories may be up to us, and then you're going to apply it to soup, culinary categories. Your final topic for that week then is going to be, well, what should we think? Is cereal soup? How should we think about the argument Joyner gives for it. How should we think about culinary categories? Are they up to us? In what sense? What follows for thinking about cereal? In weeks 4 to 6, we're going to turn to lacking food. Is there a duty to feed the hungry? We'll focus primarily on humanitarian crises, including famines. You might be thinking of recent events, for example, the earthquake that has affected Turkey and Syria. So we're going to focus on cases where people are at risk of starvation and seriously need aid in the near future. Okay. And we're going to ask, are there duties to do this? Are there duties to act to prevent suffering and death associated with these kinds of humanitarian emergencies? Or in general, not all humanitarian issues are some special emergency that's just happened recently. Sometimes these things are ongoing for a long, long time. Point being, is there a duty to act in the face of extreme poverty, humanitarian emergencies, humanitarian conditions? Okay. Our primary text is going to be a famous paper in what is sometimes called applied ethics. It's an ethical theory applied to a concrete case. This is a famous paper from the 70s where living Australian philosopher Peter Singer argues that many people living in affluent countries have a moral obligation to be acting in the face of extreme poverty conditions around the world. And he proposes a principle. We're going to engage with his argument and his principle for 3 weeks. In week 1, we're just going to apply his principle to concrete cases. Like, assume the principle is true, what follows? What are our obligations if this principle is true? And we'll look at a series of cases. Our task here really is just to understand and apply a principle. Your first paper in this section will be a paper where you apply a principle to some case studies to draw a conclusion about whether or not it applies. Then we're going to move into actually evaluating the moral principle itself. How do we argue for a moral principle? How do we evaluate one? What even are the alternatives? Singer, in his paper, offers a principle that he thinks should guide our action towards when we ought to act and why. And the principle actually is pretty demanding. It suggests that most people living in affluent countries are doing something morally wrong by doing nothing. It suggests that the moral bar is higher than most people think it is, or at least judging by their actions, think it is. What should we think about that? Is Singer right? Is this the principle we should accept? What are some objections? What are some alternatives? We're going to focus in week 5 on the fact that Singer's principle conflicts with what we might call ordinary thinking or common consensus. So that's a theme that'll connect with our earlier content. We're going to look at the psychology of helping behavior. We'll look at what kinds of things actually affect whether or not people help. And we'll consider or ask questions about how understanding something like human psychology or society, like how those things actually affect whether or not people help. How does understanding this help us think about our moral obligations? Is it against human nature to have a principle like Singer's? In what way exactly? What follows? There are some deep questions here. We're also going to think about moral character a little bit. In particular, we'll look at the challenge that people's behaviors aren't really a product of moral behavior, at least not as much as they think. And in fact, situation tends to affect behavior. How should that influence our thinking about how we should act, what our moral obligations are? So that's week 5. In week 6, we will turn to looking at alternatives to Singer's principle. We'll look at an alternative that tries to place some kind of principled limit on our obligations. We'll look at a framework that says we actually don't have any obligations to help. None. We have obligations to not harm or interfere with other people. But beyond that, there's no obligation to actively help people. Like, unless you've harmed someone, well, then maybe you have to compensate a harm done, but not independent of anything like that. Do we have obligations to help? We'll look at that framework and its implications. We'll look at the claim that humanitarian aid is actually a matter of justice, compensating harms or something like that, rather than charity, which requires that we think about the causes of poverty in our analysis of obligations to do something about poverty. So those 2 weeks will culminate with your second paper in this unit, where you actually evaluate Singer's principle and think about what are we morally required to do, where we, I have in quotes here, depends on who we're talking about, but imagine the we refers to people living in affluent countries who have some spare resources. What would such people be morally required to do? Singer says one thing, but should we accept not just what he says, but the whole package or moral framework that comes with his position? And then in the last 2 weeks, we will choose a topic together. The class is themed around food, so I'll propose some choices that are related to food, but I will also be open to choices. If anyone wants to make suggestions, I'll add them to the survey that I give to you all to select our final topic sometime around the middle of the course. Okay. That is the overview of the course and the course syllabus. Now let's take a very quick tour of Canvas. When you log into Canvas, you'll start on the dashboard page, I assume, where you have all the cards for different classes. Be sure to actually click on the card and enter the course. Sometimes students just click on this to-do list, which is also available in the dashboard view, or just go to the calendar and look for the assignments. But the assignments won't necessarily show up in order. They'll be in alphabetical order because everything due in week 1 is due at the same date and time. So it'll just put them in alphabetical order. So to make sure people aren't just randomly clicking on assignments, which happens every time I do this, I have enforced you have to at least look at them in order. And there are a few assignments that have to be completed in order. So for example, if you're going to complete a short writing assignment and then workshop it, you have to submit the assignment before the workshop activity is available. Beyond that, just looking at the assignment is enough to allow you to look at the next one. That's why there's a modules page. I wish I could hide it, but since I have used it to enforce an order, it's available. So what I recommend you use the modules page for is just a quick bird's eye view of the assignment. Check marks do not mean the assignment is complete. It just means that you have satisfied the requirements to look at the next assignment. If you want to see if stuff is complete, go to the Grade Center. You can see that it's submitted. Okay, so my #1 piece of advice is sign in from the dashboard page. Be sure to enter the actual course. Look at the home page. That's also what you get when you click on the home button. Ignore the to-do list, ignore the stuff in the calendar, and ignore the modules page unless you just want a quick bird's eye view of stuff. Focus on the home page because it's a good way to get a snapshot of the week. Let's take a quick look at it right now. So there'll be a link to next week, and then when we move to week 2, there'll be a link at the top back to week 1, so you can navigate between the links or the weeks at the top of the page. Right now, this is not a working link. There will be announcements at the top. So these are the most important ones right now, including use this homepage to navigate your week. That's super important. Info about due dates, links, including Zoom office hours. So as previously stated, I have them. They will be Thursdays from 1 to 2 p.m. Those are drop-in hours. So if you just click this link here, between 1 and 2 p.m. on Thursday, I will be there. No appointment necessary. Just click the link and drop in. If you don't want to use a video or whatever, it's totally fine. And if you want to make an appointment outside of my office hours, use this link, which will open up a Calendly page and you can schedule an appointment. There will always be a link to the syllabus, to a collection of writing resources that I've hand selected and think are great. There will be Zoom support here. Okay, then everything you'll need to do for the week, or sometimes organized by 2 weeks at a time, or even 3, will be on the homepage in order and with some amount of description, just so you can kind of see what to expect. So let's take a look at week 1. All of week 1 is officially due Monday, 1 week from the beginning of the course at noon. Each week will be due Mondays at noon. And I've recommended some target due dates for parts of the course. For each week, I'm going to separate the content into 4 parts. So you might treat it like there were 4 days of work. And if you aren't on the suggested schedule, as long as you're on something like it, where you've broken up the work into chunks and are working on it throughout the week, not just to ensure that you get it done because it's kind of a lot, but to ensure that you can collaborate with others. As long as you're doing that, it's fine. These are just suggestions. Okay, so what should you do first? Check out all the course overview stuff and resources. Add some time blocks to your calendar. It's really important that you schedule enough time for this class. These accelerated classes go by quickly and writing takes time. Update your notifications and such. This stuff is important. And then, for example, your first assignment. This is the link you will open to get to the assignment. And here's a quick description, like how long to expect it to take and a brief overview of what you're going to do. The actual instructions will be inside the assignment itself. You'll have to follow the link for the complete info, but you can get a snapshot of what you're doing. So let's take a look at that assignment. Okay, so this is just a practice assignment. Perusall, and you can see there's Perusall in the main navigation menu as well, is software integrated with Canvas that we're going to use a lot. And the point of this first assignment is just to see what it looks like and practice using the tools. So we'll do that. Here are the instructions, which will make more sense once you've opened it. Basically, Perusall is a place where I will share texts and other media. I don't know how often we'll put other media in Perusall, but you can actually put lots of different types, audio, video, whatever, usually texts. And everyone can read and annotate the same text. So I can put comments on a text, you can put comments on a text, we can reply to each other, thread style. That is one way that we'll read the texts. We'll also be uploading our own work or posting our own work in Perusall assignments so we can comment on each other's work. Okay, so make an original annotation or post means just open up the assignment and follow the instructions, but you'll just like highlight a bit of text that will open up a little bubble where you can type something and you'll post an annotation on it. Reply means just reply to anyone else's. And this is just the sample assignment. So all you have to do is write, "This is my comment," or "Nice to meet you." That being said, it would be nice if you introduce yourself, whatever you want, however short. Share a photo if you want of whatever you want, as long as it's appropriate, obviously, or not. Just practice using the tools and say hi. The other thing I really want to emphasize is that when you do a Perusall assignment, at least once you have to open this assignment like you did from Canvas and use this specific link to get to the Perusall assignment. That is how Perusall knows where to send your grade to Canvas, because it's software integrated with Canvas, but it's technically different. So Perusall will keep track of your work and there will be grades in Perusall, and then Perusall sends them to Canvas. This link is how it does that for each assignment. So if you were to navigate to Perusall using this link, it might not know where to send your info in Canvas. It's not a big deal. Nothing will get screwed up. Your work will never be lost. It just won't transfer your grade to Canvas until you come back and you click this link. So always just get to your assignment by clicking on the link in the assignment. Okay, back to the homepage. Now that we've opened that assignment, just viewed it, that's the criteria we needed to meet to look at the next assignment, which is what? Those tutorials I mentioned. Here's a little overview of it. Your main topic is to practice the concepts and skills associated with argumentation. And to do that, you're going to register for a course. You'll be prompted to do that inside your first assignment, your first argument mapping assignment, called lessons 1 through 3. This assignment should take less than 2 hours. You're going to learn what an argument is. You're going to look at components. You're going to look at indicator words used to communicate arguments and clarify those components to a reader. Tip, even though these things are online, have a notebook ready and write down aha moments or take notes that you think might be useful. Okay, what will it look like when you open this? Here's where you register for the account. You should bookmark it, save your login info and bookmark it. And when you're done, submit something here. Just maybe open a text box and say, done. And I'll check on my instructor dashboard in the online argument mapping course to see that you are indeed done, and then I'll give you full credit for it. If you have questions, you can also upload, like if you took a screenshot of something you didn't understand, you can upload it and ask a question. You can also insert photos into your text box here if you want to share something you have a question about, and you can submit as many times as you want. So you could submit questions here before you're even done with it. Let's go back to the home page. So this is where we left off. After you've completed lessons 1 through 3, you will complete a short collaborative writing assignment. The complete instructions are in the link. And then after you've written your 2 paragraphs and submitted them here, you will follow this link, open up an assignment in Perusall and share your work there. I'll show you what mine looks like in a second. Another set of lessons. Thursday, reminder that I have office hours, and this would be a great week to pop in and say hello. Just if you want to meet face to face and introduce yourself, I'd love to meet you. And if you want to practice argument mapping, especially if you've made it through lesson 6 is tricky. And if you have questions, or if you are struggling to pass the mastery check for lesson 6, come to office hours and I'll tell you if your questions are right and help you pass it. And if you want to work with others and more than one person shows up, I have activities for small groups. You could work on a homework activity together. I have a Kahoot. If a bunch of people show up, that could be useful. And like I said, I can help you with the mastery check if you're struggling, because struggling and then passing is good. Struggling and being frustrated, not so much. And this one, people tend to get a little frustrated with, just forewarning. All right, more stuff, all in order. So peruse the homepage to have a sense of what you do and a suggested schedule as highlighted. Let's check out Perusall and then end this video. So I already clicked on this earlier assignment. So I'm going to click on this one now that it's available. Actually, I think I have to leave student view. Yours might look ever so slightly different from mine because I am in instructor view looking at the assignment. Okay, so when you have finished your very short writing assignment, your task is to come to Perusall and you'll see everyone's names are here. And because there might be late adds, I've just added a few student lines down here. And so I put my name on here so I can post my sample. Your task is to highlight your name. That will, if I highlight anything, so let's say I highlight instructions. And sometimes it wants to highlight more than you want. You have to do it a couple of times, but let's say I just want to highlight one thing. It opens this little text box and I can put something here and I can either hit return or submit to if you want to do multiple lines, hold shift when you hit return. That's how you do that. Okay, so I did that to my own name. And then I posted my work, and this is what it should look like. I wrote up an argument, I annotated it as instructed, and then I rewrote one in the exact same argument, just making different writing choices, which I've annotated. So I've posted it here. This is a sample of what mine looks like. Each of you should post your own work, and then you should respond to each other to say if you agree with how people have annotated it, right? Is this actually a premise indicator word? Did someone miss a premise indicator word? Just notice the components of the argument, including the indicators, indicator words used and see if that person annotated or marked up their own writing correctly. The replies can be very short. Just weigh in. Do you think the person did it correctly? So that's what a perusal workshop activity will look like. Okay, that covers week 1. If you have follow-up questions, don't hesitate to send me a Canvas message or send me a Pronto message. And FYI, in Pronto, I'm trying to get to where it will show it down here. In Pronto, when you open this up while you're in our course, it'll automatically open up our course, and the main page will be like, if you type something there, it'll go to everyone. There's a way to send just me a message. And if you want just me to receive your message, make sure it's a direct message. But you're welcome to post a message that everyone would see. If you think other people might share your question, or if you've noticed a typo or a link that's broken other than this one, an assignment you can't get to, let me know. That being said, the most likely reason your assignment is locked is that you navigated to it some way other than the home page and you aren't looking at them in order. Okay, now I'm done. If you have follow-up questions, don't hesitate to let me know. I look forward to meeting you in the first perusal activity.